3D video animation, initially we will discuss the floor of the nasal cavity. As you could appreciate from this 3D animation, the floor of the nasal cavity is the same as the hard palate. It separates the nasal cavity from the underlying oral cavity. In yellow here we can see the anterior two-thirds of the floor of the nasal cavity and also the hard palate that are formed by the palatine process of the maxillary bone. And posteriorly shown in red, we can see the horizontal plate of palatine bone which make the posterior part of the floor of the nasal cavity. Now we will talk about the roof of the nasal cavity. As we know, the roof of the nasal cavity are made of three parts: the anterior slope part, the middle horizontal, and the posterior slope part. The anterior slope part shown in yellow here, it is made by the nasal bone. And the middle horizontal part shown in red here, it is made by the cribriform plate of ethmoidal bone. And the posterior slope part shown in green here, it is made mainly by the body of sphenoidal bone. Shifting toward the lateral nasal wall. The lateral nasal wall are made by complicated bony framework, beginning from anterior to posterior axis. The most anteriorly, they are formed by the maxillary bone shown in red here, and the maxilla give rise to bony projection known as the inferior nasal concha. Shifting more posteriorly, we can see a small bony contribution shown in green here from the lacrimal bone. After that, we have a labyrinth of ethmoidal bone shown in yellow here. As you could appreciate that the labyrinth of ethmoid bone give rise to the superior and middle nasal conchas. Shifting more posteriorly, we can see the vertical process of palatine bone in light blue here. And most posteriorly, we can see the pterygoid plate of sphenoidal bone in dark blue here. As you could appreciate from this view, that the superior and middle nasal conchas have a close proximity to each other as they arise from one bone, the ethmoidal bone. And the inferior nasal concha is far away from superior and middle conchas as it arises from other bone, the maxilla. Shifting toward the nasal septum. The nasal septum are made anteriorly by a hyaline cartilage and it is a movable part, but it is not shown here. Posteriorly, the nasal septum are made by bony framework by two parts, superior part and inferior part. The superior part shown in red here, it made by the perpendicular plate of ethmoidal bone. However, the inferior part, shown in yellow, is made by the vomer bone. As you could appreciate, the vomer bone posteriorly participate in separating two choana from each other.